All right, guys, we are live on Alaskan Recovery Warriors, and we have Tierra Dimasino. And I like Tierra for the fact that she's kind of a badass. Like we're going up on having known each other for a year, and I have seen this woman grow. I can't tell her story for her, but it's worth listening to. So without further ado, Tierra.
Oh, it's my time to shine. Oh, just kidding. All right. How does this go again? Hi, I'm Tierra and I'm a recovering addict. Because that's the part I know the best. I am in recovery. I have 4 years clean time, June 7. And that's pretty exciting. And I've worked with Alaskan Behavioral Health for almost a year. June 1 of this year will be a year. And how do I know I'm in recovery? I have custody of my children. That is proof that I'm in recovery. I reach out to psychiatrists and counselors and coworkers when I'm stressed out and when I can't let go of the things that I have no control over. I know I'm in recovery when I give myself permission to have a bad day. I also know I am continuing my recovery by not letting those bad days cause a permanent problem for me in my life.
So you've had to overcome things in this journey. Share with our listeners a little bit about that journey, both the good and bad. Like, how did it play out?
So I guess what do they call it? Pretext to like the good and bad situations that I've had to like overcome and go through. I spent 11 years actively using IV heroin, selling my body, selling everything I owned, putting my life and my children's lives at risk. So I was already like going through my own trials and error to lose who I already didn't know who I was. I was self-medicating to deal with trauma that I had been through and trauma that I had let people go through because of my addiction. And so when I got clean, literally like I had nothing. I lost everything. And my mom like desperately called around and like, hey, she needs help. And like, she had never faced that. I was like the oldest out of 5 and great, you know, my sibling and my cousins and a lot of them followed me and into that lifestyle. And so I had to be sure, like, if they're going to follow me in, they got to follow me out. So I had like this extra pressure. So when my mom was calling around for treatment, my idea was like, what is it? Like you see on TV and they're like getting shipped off and they're going to go to the beach. And I'm from Alaska. So I'm like, oh yes, let's do it. Might not stay clean, but I will get a tan. And so they're like, oh no, it's here. And you get to have your kids. And I was like super shocked. And so the first big hurdle that I went through was in stepping stones. They really gave me a rebirth and an opportunity to rebuild my life in recovery. And so some of the most complicated hurdles I had to go through, I was fortunate enough to have an entire treatment team behind me to help guide me and to help provide a safety net for when I did fail, because you don't get clean and everything works. You get clean and everything is so much harder because, you know, there is this like wild thing that happens in your brain where it just kind of stops developing the way it's supposed to develop, and it develops around your lifestyle. And so when you cut that substance out and you get on medications for your brain to work the way it's supposed to, and you're facing all of these things, your emotions and your feelings are all brand new. Even if you may have felt them before, they're all still brand new. And it's so frustrating to be like, I've never cried before. I've been clean 60 days. Why can't I stop crying? Because everything is being released all over again and your body's trying so hard to like do all these things. And so having a safety net was so valuable for me because, for one, I am hard-headed. I needed the therapeutic community. I needed people to tell me, like, you're really not doing as well as you think you are. You might be doing the homework appropriately, but you're not living it. You're not walking it. And I never knew what that meant. And I always heard, oh, trust the process. Well, you know, coming from that lifestyle, like, you don't really know what the process is. So you have to like have this blind faith going into it. And we used to call it drinking the Kool-Aid. And so like me and like the group of women that I went through treatment with were like, have you drank the Kool-Aid yet? And like you work your program to the best of your ability, and in like the most sincere, non-sarcastic way, like do it, just like do it. It sounds so easy, but, or let me take that back. It sounds so difficult, but in reality, like the minute your heart and your head connect and they're like, okay, like I really don't have control. The obstacles that you face are going to continue, but the way that you handle them are going to be different. And like, I had applied for peer support jobs and I was turned down because I didn't have enough clean time. I applied for clerical positions within recovery centers. And the minute you tell anyone that you are a recovering addict, they're like, well, we have to have all this information. And mind you, like I broke many laws. Was I caught? No. So nothing, I have no like criminal record aside from like lots of collections because I love to spend money, but nothing. And so I'm like, what are they holding against me? And I realized, I think in that moment last year, before I got into the peer training, that like the minute you tell anyone that you are in recovery, you have to be prepared to face a stigma that our society is not ready to let go of. And that was like the most damaging part of my summer last summer, was learning how like uptight and selfish and unwilling to be educated our society really is. And not just on the mental health stuff, but like on addiction and on recovery, and telling people you're in recovery. They, you know, they don't care because they don't understand. And that lack of information and acknowledgement is so sad. And that was rough for me last summer, that part.
I remember that. So currently, you are not the girl I met last summer.
Mm-hmm.
You're way more full of yourself this year.
Oh yeah.
And I'm totally okay with that. I love seeing that thriving person in you. Like, you are not striking to recovery. You are, I'm there. Now I'm going to thrive and have a life.
Mm-hmm.
So and we've come across a couple of these over this last year. How do you deal with those struggles? I know you trust me with a lot of your stories as a sounding board, but how do you really maintain what you've already overcome?
A lot of it really is that for one, I over rationalize things to make them okay, sometimes to my own detriment, but at the same time, when I do that, the beneficial part of it is that no one, whether they know everything, for one, I don't like keep secrets. I'm very open about my life. Mm-hmm. Because really, like, when there's stuff to hide, that there's guilt that is within that person, and you can't like move past it until it's like released, right? And like secrets keep you sick. But with all of that, no one is going to talk shit to me and be more harsh and cruel than my own mind. And I do that all by myself. So nothing no one says is going to be worse than I've already said to myself now or before, or, you know, any of it. And so I have like, I still do, I still do positive affirmations when I'm having really hard days, because I do have a diagnosis that isn't helped by medication, only therapy. And part of, you know, coming to terms with like a pill's not going to fix you, because that's not how it works. That was a really hard pill to swallow recently, you know, just confirming a diagnosis that I like judged for so long. But the willingness to continue sharing, even when it doesn't feel good, is probably what keeps me going and makes it easier.
So as far as I'm concerned, like, you are one of the prized possessions of this agency because of your work and your flexibility and your no nonsense mindset. I mean, you call it like it is. You call a spade, you call the clients out, you call out the staff, like you do just about everything that I used to do and got in trouble for. Only here they actually appreciate you.
Yeah, I think the only trouble I get in is like when I'm like, afterwards, I'm like, oh God, they're gonna hate me, you know? But at the same time, like, I have to also remember, if I say something to a particular client, will they remember? Probably not. So
Yeah, exactly.
In that moment, what I'm doing is working.
Right.
And it's also how I would want someone to like interact with me if I was struggling in that life.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at. You know how to do that whole chameleon thing with every single person you interact with, which is an artistic feat when it comes to our jobs as peers. So what's the part that the last year has taught you?
What
has the last year taught you about yourself, your recovery, and the job?
Value. I think that's like the biggest God, are you still there? Did I do something? Oh. The biggest thing that stands out is value. Until I worked for this agency, I had never worked with anyone with mental illness. I had never really understood mental illness, like even coupled with an addiction. And I value people who have to live like that every day, because sometimes I go and like see people and I'm like, God, I was living real bad, but there's something in someone who is always worse off, you know, and who doesn't have the support that I do. And I also value the support network that I continue to have and build on, because there are some people, A1 since day one in this agency and before the agency, that I'm like, God, why were you sticking around, you know? But like, I also am very, very stubborn. And so I'm like, I got to prove it. You know, you have to see I'm doing it. I'm adulting. I'm momming. I'm working. It's happening.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of value in like reassuring yourself that you're doing the right thing. And there's a lot of value I have like started developing on my own, within my own heart and within my own self, that like I am valuable. Yeah. A year ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago, those words would have never come out of my mouth.
No, they wouldn't.
And so that means a lot. And I don't think that I would have been able to do it without the peer support training, without the on hand, like in person, hands-on, like read and write this down, like this is you, this can be you.
Yeah.
How do you how do you help you? And that's
Yeah.
how I look at it when I go to work every day. Like, how do I help myself? Because that was me.
Yep. I love that. So for the listeners, last question. What is your message surrounding recovery and the path that lay ahead in their individual experiences?
That was a big question, Jen. Hold on. One more time.
So what is
One
your
more back.
message surrounding recovery and what lays ahead for people in their own individual experience? Outside of, obviously, it's just yours.
So my message for recovery is kind of like the chat that we were having a little bit before this, that like just do the best that you can.
Yep.
For you. And one of my really good friends told me this one time from NA, that everyone is only doing the best they can in that moment because that's all they know.
Yep.
And so sometimes you haven't learned the right coping skill. So there's no use in beating yourself up about it.
Yep.
For starting or restarting or continuing your journey in recovery and your path, you're making your own way. Days still get hard. There's still triggers. My triggers have changed around what situations I am in life. And so that's something that I thought was very odd at first, being triggered by something that was like seemingly normal.
Mhm.
And that's new, learning how to remold my relapse prevention plan and my safety plan and my RAP plan for myself. But it's teaching me the skills that I need to help others to know how to do that, because that's like the golden ticket there in recovery. Like, you don't get to keep yours without giving it to somebody.
Exactly. I love that. Well, Tierra, I appreciate you making time for us. Like I said earlier today, and I've said a couple other times, feel free to shoot me an email, guys. Tag me on Facebook. I want to hear stories all across the state. I don't want to just hear the peeps that I'm close to that I can drag in here because they're just that cool. I want all of you telling your stories, because the only way it gets out there and it stops being stigmatized is when we listen and we share. So thank you, Tierra. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.